The bathroom door was open just enough for me to see him. My husband of 15 years stood at the mirror, adjusting his collar with the kind of care he hadn't shown in months. Maybe years. He smoothed his hands over the blue shirt I'd bought him last Christmas, the one he claimed didn't fit right when I suggested he wear it to my company dinner. But apparently it fit just fine tonight. For someone else. I stood in the hallway with 2 wine glasses in my hands, the bottle of Cabernet we'd been saving sitting on the kitchen counter below. The table was set with our wedding china, the good stuff we only brought out for special occasions. Candles waited to be lit. The pasta was keeping warm in the oven. I'd even changed into the red dress I knew he used to love, back when he noticed things like that. 15 years ago today, I'd married Graham Mitchell in a small church ceremony with our families watching. I'd promised to love him in sickness and health, for better or worse. I'd kept that promise through the lean years when he was building his career, through the loss of our first pregnancy, through the fights and struggles that every marriage faces. I thought he'd kept his promises too. "You look nice," I said, stepping into the doorway. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Special occasion?" Graham's eyes met mine in the mirror. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt maybe. Or annoyance at being caught. Then his expression smoothed into something casual, almost bored. "I have dinner plans," he said, reaching for his cologne. The expensive one. The one I'd given him for our anniversary last year. Dinner plans. I repeated the words slowly, testing them on my tongue. They tasted bitter. "On our anniversary." He sprayed the cologne on his neck and wrists with deliberate care. "It's just dinner, Nat, don't make it into something. Our 15th anniversary." My fingers tightened on the wine glasses. "I made reservations at Antonio's 3 months ago. I told you about it every week. Something came up." He brushed past me into the bedroom, leaving a cloud of cologne in his wake. That scent used to make me lean into him. Now it made my stomach turn. "I'll make it up to you later. We can celebrate tomorrow or next weekend." I watched him check his wallet, his phone, his keys. The routine of a man preparing to leave. Each movement was so normal, so casual, like he was heading to the gym or meeting colleagues for drinks. Not abandoning his wife on the most important day of their marriage. "Who is she?" The question came out before I could stop it. Graham paused with his hand on the dresser. "What?" "You heard me." I set the wine glasses down on the nightstand with deliberate care, afraid I might throw them otherwise. "Who is she?" "Jesus Christ, Natalie." He turned to face me, his expression a mix of irritation and something that might have been shame if I was being generous. "Why do you always have to be so dramatic? I'm just meeting someone for dinner. On our anniversary." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "You're getting dressed up, wearing cologne, checking yourself in the mirror like you're going on a date. Because you are going on a date, aren't you?" The silence stretched between us. Through the bedroom window, I could see the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. 15 years ago, we'd left our wedding reception at sunset, driving away with tin cans trailing behind the car and stupid grins on our faces. We'd been so young. So sure we'd beat the odds. "Her name is Simone," he said finally. "She's a colleague from work. We're discussing a project over dinner." "You're lying." "I'm not lying." But he couldn't meet my eyes. "It's a work dinner. That's all." "Then I'll come with you." I crossed my arms. "If it's just work, you won't mind your wife joining." His jaw tightened. "That would be inappropriate." "But going alone isn't?" "You're being ridiculous." He grabbed his jacket from the closet. "I said I'd make it up to you. Can we please not fight about this?" I stared at the man I'd built a life with. We'd bought this house together 8 years ago. I could point to every room and remember something we'd done together. Painting the kitchen at midnight because we couldn't wait for the contractor. Arguing over tiles for the bathroom, then laughing about it later. Building the bookshelf in the living room that still sat slightly crooked because neither of us could read instructions properly. When had we stopped laughing together? When had the man who used to bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning become someone who forgot our anniversary existed? "Don't go," I said quietly. "Graham, please. If you walk out that door right now, everything changes." He stopped with his hand on the bedroom door. For a moment I thought he might stay. I thought 15 years might mean something more than whatever Simone offered. "I'll be back late," he said. "Don't wait up." The front door closed behind him 3 minutes later. I heard his car start, heard the sound of the engine fade as he drove away. The candles remained unlit on the dining room table. The wine stayed corked. The pasta grew cold in the oven. I walked through the house in my red dress, looking at the life we'd built together. Wedding photos lined the hallway. My college degree hung next to his MBA. Books we'd read together filled the shelves. Everything looked the same as it had that morning. But something fundamental had broken. I found my phone and opened the drawer where I kept important documents. Our marriage certificate was there, along with mortgage papers, insurance policies, and all the other paperwork that proved our life together existed on paper even if it was crumbling in reality. My best friend Clarissa answered on the second ring. "Hey, how's the anniversary dinner? Is Graham surprised by the chocolate cake you made?" "He's on a date," I said. The words came out flat and emotionless. "With someone named Simone. He left 30 minutes ago." Silence. Then, "What?" I confronted him. "He said he'd make it up later." I laughed, but it sounded wrong. 15 years and he said he'd make it up later. "Natalie." Clarissa's voice went hard. "Where are you right now?" "Home. Sitting at our anniversary dinner for one." "I'm coming over." "No." I stood up, suddenly decisive. "No, don't. I need to think." "Think about what?" "He's cheating on you. On your anniversary." The word hung in the air between us. Cheating. Such a simple word for something so destructive. I'd never imagined Graham would cheat. He'd always been so steady, so reliable. The kind of man who showed up when he said he would and kept his promises. Except he didn't keep this one. "I'm going to fix this," I said. "But not the way he thinks." After I hung up with Clarissa, I sat at the dining room table and stared at the cold pasta. The wine. The good china. I'd spent all day preparing for a celebration that never happened. I'd been excited, actually looking forward to a romantic evening with my husband. How stupid I'd been. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham, running later than expected. "Don't wait up." I read it 3 times. Not a single word about our anniversary. Not an apology for missing it. Just a casual notification that his date was going well enough to extend it. Something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, sharp and cutting. But underneath it, something harder began to form. A resolve that felt like steel settling into my spine. I'd given Graham 15 years of my life. I'd supported his career moves, entertained his colleagues, managed our home, and loved him through everything. I'd been a good wife. A faithful wife. I'd kept every vow I made. And he'd thrown it away for dinner with Simone. I picked up my wine glass and walked to the back porch. The evening air was cool against my skin. Our neighbors were having a barbecue. I could hear laughter and music drifting over the fence. Normal people having normal evenings, unaware that my world was falling apart 3 houses down. Graham thought I'd be here when he got home. He expected me to cry, to yell, maybe to throw things. Then he'd apologize with empty promises. We'd have a fight, but eventually things would settle back to normal. Because that's what always happened. We fought, we made up, life went on. Not this time. I pulled out my phone and started making notes. First, I needed information. How long had this been going on? Was Simone the first, or had there been others? I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made any decisions. Second, I needed to protect myself financially. Graham made good money as a regional sales director, but I'd always kept my own career as a graphic designer. We had joint accounts, a joint mortgage, joint everything. That would need to be untangled carefully. Third, I needed evidence. If this was going to end the way I suspected it would, I wanted documentation. Dates, times, proof of infidelity. I wasn't going to let him paint me as the crazy, jealous wife when this was over. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Graham. "Might just crash at a hotel tonight. Long day tomorrow." I stared at those words. He wasn't even pretending anymore. He was telling me in the clearest possible terms that he was spending the night with her. On our anniversary. I typed back, "Okay." Just one word. I could picture his face when he read it, the confusion at my easy acceptance. He'd expected a fight. He'd probably braced himself for angry texts and phone calls. He had no idea what was coming. I went back inside and blew out the candles I'd never lit. I put away the good china and threw out the cold pasta. I changed out of my red dress and into comfortable clothes. Then I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys. Because Graham was right about one thing. This wouldn't be like our other fights. This time, when we made up, it wouldn't be with apologies and promises to do better. This time we wouldn't make up at all. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Graham adjusting his collar in the mirror. I heard his voice saying, "I'll make it up later," like our 15-year marriage was a missed lunch date instead of the foundation of our entire adult lives. At 6:47 a.m., I heard his car pull into the driveway. I was already dressed and sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I'd been up for hours, alternating between crying and making lists. My laptop sat open in front of me, 3 different divorce attorney websites bookmarked. I drafted an email to my supervisor asking for a few personal days. I'd even started a spreadsheet tracking our joint assets. The front door opened. Graham walked in looking rumpled, his blue shirt wrinkled, his cologne long faded. He stopped when he saw me sitting there. "You're up early," he said. I never went to sleep. I took a sip of coffee. It had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. "How was your night?" His expression flickered. Guilt, definitely guilt this time. But also something else. Defiance maybe. Like he was tired of hiding and ready to make this my fault somehow. "Look, Nat, about last night." He set his keys on the counter. "I know you're upset." Upset? I rolled the word around. That's an interesting choice. Can we not do this right now? I need to shower and change. I have a meeting at 9. "Sit down, Graham." Something in my tone made him pause. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was just sitting there, looking at him with what I hoped was a completely blank expression. After years of marriage, I knew Graham Mitchell inside and out. I knew what scared him, what motivated him, what made him feel safe. And I knew he was most uncomfortable when he couldn't read me. He pulled out a chair and sat. "Okay, let's talk. How long has it been going on with Simone?" His shoulders tensed. "Nothing is going on. I told you it's just work." "Graham." I set my coffee cup down. "You spent the night with her. On our anniversary. Don't insult me by pretending this is innocent." The silence stretched. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out which version of the truth would get him out of this with the least damage. That's what our marriage had become. 2 people calculating instead of communicating. "For months," he said finally. "It started at the regional conference in April." April. I tried to remember that month. Had there been signs? Had I missed something obvious? I'd been busy with a major client project, working long hours to meet a deadline. Graham had been traveling more than usual for work. We'd been like ships passing in the night, barely seeing each other. I thought we were just busy. I hadn't realized we were falling apart. "Do you love her?" The question hurt to ask. "I don't know." He ran his hands through his hair. "It's complicated." "It's really not." I leaned back in my chair. "Either you love her or you don't. Either you want to be married to me or you don't. Those are pretty simple questions, Graham." I didn't mean for this to happen. His voice took on a pleading quality. Simone just understood me in a way that felt natural. We connected over work stuff at first and then it became more. "But it doesn't mean I don't care about you. You missed our 15th anniversary to be with her." My voice stayed steady. "You didn't just forget. You actively chose to spend it with someone else. So forgive me if I don't feel particularly cared about right now." I said I'm sorry. He reached across the table like he might take my hand, then thought better of it. "I know I messed up. But we can fix this, right? We always fix things." I looked at the man I'd married. 15 years ago, he'd cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. He'd promised to love and cherish me, to be faithful and true. He'd meant those words then. I was sure of it. What had changed? When had we become strangers who shared a mortgage and nothing else? "What does she give you that I don't?" I asked. Graham shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Help me understand why my husband of 15 years needs another woman." "You're always busy with your work." The accusation came out defensive. "You're tired all the time. We barely talk anymore unless it's about bills or house stuff. When was the last time we had an actual conversation that wasn't about logistics?" I felt the words hit like physical blows. "So this is my fault?" "No, that's not what I'm saying." But his tone suggested that's exactly what he was saying. "I'm just trying to explain how it happened. Simone makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. She laughs at my jokes. She's interested in my ideas. She makes me feel like I matter." "I make you feel like you matter." The words came out sharp. "I've spent 15 years supporting your career, your dreams, your everything. I've been here through all of it, Graham. Where was Simone when you were working 80-hour weeks to make regional director? Where was she when your father died and you couldn't get out of bed for 3 days?" "I was here. I've always been here." "I know." He looked down at the table. "I know you have. And I appreciate everything you've done. But somewhere along the way we stopped being partners and started being roommates. We live together, but we're not really together anymore." The truth of his words stung because I couldn't entirely deny them. We had grown distant. Between my design projects and his sales territories, we'd let the connection between us fray. I'd noticed it, felt the distance growing, but I'd told myself it was just a phase. All marriages went through rough patches. I'd thought we were strong enough to weather it. So instead of talking to me about it, you had an affair. I stood up, needing to move. Instead of suggesting marriage counseling or telling me you were unhappy, you went and found someone else. I know it was wrong. He stood too, following me into the living room. But I'm telling you now. We can fix this. I'll end things with Simone. We'll go to counseling. Whatever you need. I turned to face him. Why? What do you mean why? Why do you want to fix it? Is it because you love me and can't imagine your life without me? Or is it because divorce is expensive and messy and you don't want to deal with splitting everything up? He flinched. That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Graham? Spending 15 years building a life with someone who could throw it all away for a woman he's known 4 months. I'm not throwing anything away. His voice rose. I'm standing here trying to make this right. What more do you want from me? I want you to have not done it in the first place. I felt tears building but refused to let them fall. I want you to have remembered our anniversary. I want you to have looked at me the way you apparently look at Simone. I want my husband back, but I'm starting to think he never actually existed. Of course I existed. I'm right here. No. I shook my head. You're not. The man I married would never have done this. The Graham I fell in love with would have talked to me if he was unhappy. He would have fought for us instead of looking for someone new. You're not that man anymore. I don't know who you are now. He stared at me and I saw the moment reality hit him. He'd expected anger and tears, followed by forgiveness. That was our pattern. But something in my face must have told him this time was different. What are you saying, Nat? I took a deep breath. I'm saying I need some time to think. I need space to figure out what I want. Don't do anything rash. Panic crept into his voice. Please. We can work through this. Maybe we can. I moved toward the stairs. But right now, I can't even look at you without seeing you get dressed for her. So I need you to give me space. How much space? I don't know yet. I paused on the bottom step. But you should probably stay somewhere else for a few days. Maybe Simone has room for you. The words were cruel, and I felt a small, bitter satisfaction at the way they landed. Graham's face went pale. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. I climbed 3 steps, then stopped. Oh, and Graham? When you pack your stuff, take that blue shirt with you. I never want to see it again. I went upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom. Then, finally, I let myself cry. But even through the tears, I was planning. Because Graham had made a critical mistake. He thought this conversation was about saving our marriage. It wasn't. It was about ending it on my terms. I stayed in the bathroom until I heard him moving around downstairs. Drawers opening and closing. His footsteps on the stairs, then in our bedroom. More drawers. The sound of a suitcase zipper. When I finally came out, he was standing in the bedroom doorway with a duffel bag. I'm staying at a hotel, he said. But this is temporary, right? You'll call me when you're ready to talk. I didn't answer. I just looked at him until he left. After his car pulled away, I walked through the house again. Everything looked the same, but it felt different now. The wedding photos seemed to mock me. The furniture we'd picked out together just looked like things. Objects. Stuff that could be divided up and distributed when everything fell apart. My phone rang. Clarissa. He came home this morning, I said before she could speak. He admitted everything. 4 months. Her name is Simone. That absolute piece of trash. Clarissa's voice was hot with anger. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I sank onto the couch. Part of me wants to scream and throw things. Part of me just feels numb. And part of me is already trying to figure out how to protect myself when this all falls apart. Falls apart? Babe, it already fell apart. I know. I closed my eyes. I just need to figure out what comes next. What comes next is you find the best divorce attorney in the city and you take him for everything he's worth. I'd been married to Graham for over half my adult life. I'd built my entire world around us. Our home, our routines, our plans for the future. Even my friendships had become couple friendships. Our social circle was full of people who knew us as Graham and Natalie, a unit, a team. Who was I without him? I genuinely didn't know anymore. But I was about to find out. Graham called 17 times over the next 3 days. I answered exactly once, just to tell him I still wasn't ready to talk. After that, I let everything go to voicemail. His messages progressed from apologetic to frustrated to angry and back to apologetic again. I didn't listen to most of them. Instead, I spent those 3 days doing something I should have done years ago. I looked at our life with clear eyes, without the filter of love or hope or nostalgia. What I saw wasn't pretty. On day 1, I went through our joint accounts. Graham made more money than me, about $60,000 more per year, but I'd always contributed my share to the household expenses. What I found surprised me. Regular charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel stays on nights he'd claimed to be working late. Cash withdrawals that didn't match up with anything in our budget. He'd been spending our money on his affair. Our money. Not just his salary, but money from our joint account. Money I'd earned and deposited. He'd used it to wine and dine Simone while I sat at home thinking we were saving for a vacation. I documented everything. Screenshots, printed statements, highlighted transactions. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence and filled it systematically. On day 2, I went through his home office. Graham kept everything remarkably well organized. His filing system made it easy to find documents, tax returns, insurance policies, investment accounts I didn't even know we had. Credit cards in his name only, with statements showing more restaurant charges, jewelry purchases, weekend trips. How had I missed this? The answer was simple and painful. I trusted him. I'd believed him when he said he was working late or traveling for business. I'd never thought to check up on him because that's not what people in good marriages did. Except we hadn't been in a good marriage. I just hadn't realized it. I photographed everything. More evidence for the folder. On day 3, I did something I wasn't proud of. I checked his laptop. Graham used the same password for everything had for years. I'd set up most of his accounts when he wasn't tech-savvy enough to do it himself. He'd never bothered to change them. I found his text conversations with Simone easily. Months of messages, starting professional and gradually becoming more personal. Then flirtatious. Then explicit. I read just enough to confirm what I already knew, then I stopped. I didn't need to torture myself with the details of their relationship. What I needed was ammunition for the divorce. I took screenshots of the most damning messages. Simone apparently knew he was married. She knew about me. They'd discussed me actually in ways that made my blood boil. She called me the wife in her messages like I was some abstract concept instead of a real person whose life they were destroying. When are you going to tell the wife? One message read. Soon, Graham had replied. I just need to find the right time. That was from 3 weeks ago. He'd been planning to tell me. To leave me, I assumed, for Simone. Our anniversary had probably been his deadline, ironically. Maybe he'd chickened out at the last minute, or maybe he'd decided to have one last night with her before facing the consequences. I'd never know, and I was starting to realize I didn't care. After I'd gathered all the evidence I needed, I made an appointment with an attorney. Not just any attorney, but the best divorce lawyer in the city according to 3 different online rankings. Patricia Hollis had a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and expensive. Her consultation fee alone was $500. I paid it with our joint credit card. Let Graham see that charge and wonder. Patricia's office was downtown in a glass tower with views of the river. Her receptionist was polite and professional. The waiting room had leather chairs and recent magazines. Everything about the place screamed competence and success. Ms. Riley? Patricia herself came out to greet me. She was in her 50s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a handshake that could crush bones. Come on back. Her office was just as impressive as the waiting room. Diplomas lined one wall. Bookshelves held legal volumes and photos of Patricia with various judges and politicians. This was a woman who knew everyone and knew how to use those connections. So, Patricia sat behind her massive desk and folded her hands. Tell me everything. I did. I told her about the missed anniversary. About Simone. About the 4-month affair. About the text messages and the financial records I'd found. I showed her the evidence folder on my laptop, everything organized and documented. Patricia listened without interrupting. She took notes occasionally but mostly just watched me with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through my careful composure. You've done excellent work documenting all this, she said when I finished. Most people come in here with nothing but suspicions and hurt feelings. You've built me a case. I want to be smart about this, I said. I don't want to act out of anger or pain. I want to protect myself. Good. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Let's talk about what you want from this divorce. Do you want to fight for the house? Alimony? Revenge? I want what's fair. I thought about it. Actually, I want more than fair. I want him to understand that actions have consequences. He used our money for his affair. He betrayed 15 years of marriage. I want him to feel that. Music to my ears. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a particularly warm smile. Here's what we're going to do. First, I want you to open your own bank account. Transfer half of everything in your joint accounts into it. You're entitled to that money, and I don't want him draining the accounts before you file. I nodded. Okay. Second, I want you to document everything from here on out. Every conversation you have with him. Every text message. Every time he comes to the house or contacts you. We're building a pattern of behavior. I can do that. Third, and this is important. Patricia leaned forward. I want you to keep living in the house. Don't move out. In many states, whoever leaves the marital home can be seen as abandoning it. You want to maintain your claim to the property. That one was harder. Living in the house meant living with the memories. But I understood the logic. What about him? I asked. Can I make him stay away? Not yet. Technically it's his house too. But once we file, we can request a temporary order establishing residency. Given that he's already voluntarily staying elsewhere, that should be straightforward. Patricia checked her notes. You said he makes significantly more than you do. That works in your favor for alimony claims. I don't know if I want alimony. The idea of being financially tied to Graham after this felt wrong. I have my own career. I can support myself. I understand the sentiment. But let me explain something. Patricia's expression turned serious. You've been married 15 years. During that time, you've presumably made career sacrifices to support his advancement. Maybe you turned down jobs that required relocation. Maybe you handled more of the household management, which gave him time to focus on his career. Those sacrifices have real financial value. I thought about all the times I'd rearranged my schedule to accommodate Graham's travel. The client meetings I'd rescheduled because he needed me to host his colleagues for dinner. The job opportunity in New York I'd turned down because he didn't want to leave his position here. You're right, I said. I did sacrifice for his career. Then you're entitled to compensation for that. This isn't about revenge. It's about fairness. He benefited from your support. Now you deserve to benefit from what that support helped him build. We spent another hour going over details. Patricia outlined a timeline for filing. She explained the process, what to expect, how long it might take. She talked about mediation versus litigation, settlement negotiations, asset division. By the time I left her office, I had a plan. More importantly, I had hope. Not hope that my marriage could be saved, but hope that I could survive its ending. I drove home in a daze. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The radio played some song about love and loss. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life happen to someone else. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Graham's car parked on the street. He was sitting on the front porch steps, waiting. My stomach clenched. We need to talk, he said as I got out of my car. I'm not ready. I moved toward the door, but he stood up and blocked my path. Nat, please. It's been 3 days. You can't avoid me forever. I'm not avoiding you. I'm processing. There's a difference. Where were you? His eyes were searching, almost desperate. I called. You didn't answer. I was out. I didn't know him details, but part of me wanted to tell him. Wanted to see his face when he realized I was already moving forward. Running errands. What kind of errands? None of your business, Graham. He looked shocked. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never been this cold to him. Even in our worst fights, I'd always engaged. I'd yelled and cried and talked things through. This new version of me, this calm, distant woman who wouldn't let him in, was clearly throwing him off balance. Good. Can we please just talk? He asked. I miss you. I miss us. There is no us anymore. I finally met his eyes. You made sure of that when you chose Simone over our anniversary. It was one mistake. One night. It was 4 months, I corrected. And probably longer before it became physical. You didn't make one mistake, Graham. You made hundreds of them. Every time you texted her. Every time you saw her. Every time you lied to me about where you were. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as frustration. Okay, you're right. I messed up more than once. But I'm here now trying to fix it. Doesn't that count for something? You're here because you got caught, I said. If I hadn't confronted you about that night, how long would you have kept going? When were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to keep living this double life until I figured it out on my own? I don't know. At least he was being honest. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. Well, now you have time to figure it out. I moved past him to the door. Just do it somewhere else. I told you I need space. Stop showing up here. This is my house too. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to spend your nights elsewhere. I unlocked the door. Go home to your hotel, Graham. Or better yet, go home to Simone. She's what you wanted, right? I went inside and closed the door before he could respond. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment before finally walking back to his car. He sat there for another 10 minutes, probably hoping I'd come back out. I didn't. Eventually he drove away. I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened the closet. Half of it was empty now, just bare hangers where Graham's clothes used to hang. I pulled out my own clothes and started sorting. Things I'd bought to please him went into one pile. Things I actually liked went into another. The difference was illuminating. Tomorrow I would open my own bank account. I would transfer my share of our money into it. I would keep gathering evidence and building my case. But tonight I would grieve. Because even though I was angry, even though I knew this marriage was over, I was still mourning what I'd thought we had. I changed into comfortable clothes and made myself dinner. Pasta again, but this time I actually tasted it. I poured myself a glass of the anniversary wine we never drank. I sat at the dining room table and raised a toast to the empty chair across from me. Here's to 15 years, I said to no one. And here's to whatever comes next. The wine tasted bitter. Or maybe that was just everything else. Graham left me alone for exactly 2 days after our porch confrontation. Then the texts started coming. Can we please talk like adults? You're being unreasonable. I'm willing to go to counseling. Isn't that what you wanted? Simone and I broke things off. I chose you. That last one almost made me laugh. He'd chosen me after I'd already mentally divorced him and hired an attorney. How generous. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I kept moving forward with my plan. I opened a new bank account at a different institution. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings, which came to $73,000. Graham would see the transaction, but Patricia had assured me I was well within my rights. I also started looking for a new job. My current position was good, but I'd stayed partly because the flexible hours worked well with Graham's schedule. Now I didn't need to coordinate with anyone. I updated my portfolio, refreshed my resume, and started reaching out to contacts about senior designer positions at bigger firms. On the outside, I maintained perfect calm. I went to work. I came home. I answered questions from concerned friends with vague assurances that Graham and I were working through some things. Only Clarissa knew the full truth, and she'd been my rock through all of it. You're scary when you're calm like this, she told me over coffee one morning. Graham is used to fighting with you. This quiet planning thing is going to destroy him. That's not my goal, I said. But it wasn't not my goal either. I was living in our house alone now, and I was surprised to find I didn't mind. The silence was peaceful after years of adjusting my life around someone else's schedule. I could eat dinner at 9 p.m. if I felt like it. I could leave my design projects spread across the dining room table. I could watch whatever I wanted on TV without negotiating. It was lonely sometimes. But it was my loneliness, and there was something honest about that. Graham finally showed up again on a Saturday morning. I was in the backyard pulling weeds from the garden bed I'd been neglecting. I heard the back gate open and looked up to see him standing there with coffee and bagels. Peace offering, he said, holding up the bag. Your favorite? Sesame with cream cheese. What are you doing here, Graham? I wanted to see you. Talk to you face to face instead of through these cold text messages. He came closer. Can we just sit down and have breakfast together? Like we used to. I stood up, brushing dirt off my jeans. We never used to have breakfast together. You were always in too much of a hurry to get to work. That's not true. Yes, it is. We haven't had a weekend breakfast together in at least 2 years. I know because I stopped buying bagels since you never ate them with me anyway. He looked stung. I didn't realize. You didn't realize a lot of things. I pulled off my gardening gloves. Why are you really here? I told you. I want to talk. Fine. Talk. He set the coffee and bagels down on the patio table. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past couple weeks. About us, about where we went wrong. I take full responsibility for the affair. That was wrong and I'm sorry. But Nat, we both contributed to the problems in our marriage. Here it comes, I thought. The part where he tries to make this partly my fault. I'm listening, I said neutrally. You were always so focused on your work. He sat down, gesturing for me to join him. I didn't. You'd get these big projects and disappear into them for weeks at a time. I'd try to talk to you about my day, and you'd be distracted, thinking about design concepts or client meetings. I had a career, I said. Just like you did. I know, and I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying maybe we both got too caught up in our own things. We stopped prioritizing each other. He looked up at me with what I suspected he thought was sincerity. But we can fix that. We can make each other a priority again. You prioritized Simone just fine, I pointed out. That's different. How? It just is. He stood up, frustrated. Why are you being so difficult about this? I'm trying to save our marriage. No, you're trying to save yourself from a divorce you don't want. I crossed my arms. Where is Simone now, by the way? Did you really break up with her, or was that just another lie? I really broke up with her. His jaw tightened. The day after you told me to leave. I went to her apartment and ended it. How did she take it? What? How did Simone react when you told her you were going back to your wife? I asked. Was she upset? Did she cry? I don't see how that's relevant. I'm curious. You spent 4 months building a relationship with her. You used our money to take her places and buy her things. You chose her over me on our anniversary. And then you just ended it just like that because your wife found out and suddenly there were consequences. Graham's face reddened. You're twisting this around. I'm really not. I'm just looking at it clearly for the first time. I moved toward the house. You need to leave now. I have things to do today. What things? It's Saturday. We always used to spend Saturdays together. No, we didn't. You spent Saturdays playing golf with your colleagues or working on projects. I spent them grocery shopping and doing laundry and all the other stuff that kept our household running. I paused at the door. But you're right about one thing. We did stop prioritizing each other. The difference is I would have worked on that if you'd talked to me. Instead, you found someone else. Nat, wait. He followed me to the door. Just talk to me. Really talk to me. Don't you miss us at all? I turned to face him. You want to know what I miss? I miss the man I thought I married. I miss feeling safe in my own marriage. I miss being able to trust my husband. But you? The real you who could do this? No, Graham. I don't miss you at all. The words hit him like a slap. I could see it in his face, the moment he realized his usual tactics weren't working. The apologies and promises weren't enough this time. You've already given up on us, he said quietly. You gave up on us when you started texting Simone. I went inside and locked the door behind me. Through the window, I watched him stand on the patio for a long time. He picked up the coffee and bagels he'd brought, looked at them, then threw them in the trash can by the fence. Then he left without another word. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before I let myself feel anything. The confrontation had left me shaky. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to throw things. Part of me wanted to run after him and accept his apology because that would be easier than this hard, lonely path I'd chosen. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I went back to my computer and continued filling out job applications. I updated my LinkedIn profile. I emailed 3 former clients about potential freelance work. I was building a life that didn't include Graham Mitchell. And it was harder than I'd expected, but also strangely freeing. My phone rang. Clarissa. How are you holding up? She asked. Graham was just here. I told her about the conversation. He's still trying to fix this. He doesn't understand that it's already broken beyond repair. Men never understand that until the divorce papers hit them in the face, Clarissa said. Speaking of which, when are you filing? Patricia wants me to wait another week. Let Graham keep thinking there's hope while we finalize all the documentation. It felt manipulative, but Patricia had explained the strategic advantage. The more Graham believed we might reconcile, the less likely he was to start hiding assets or preparing his own case. That's cold, Clarissa said approvingly. I like this new ruthless version of you. I'm not ruthless. I'm just protecting myself. Same thing sometimes. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day doing normal weekend things. I cleaned the house. I did laundry. I meal prepped for the upcoming week. I video chatted with my sister in California and managed to avoid telling her what was happening. Our mother would find out eventually, but I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. That night, I sat in the living room with a glass of wine and actually watched the TV shows I liked. Graham had always complained about my taste in documentaries, so I'd gotten used to watching them alone in the bedroom on my laptop. Now I could watch them on the big screen without anyone sighing dramatically or checking their phone in boredom. It was a small thing, but it was mine. My phone buzzed with another text from Graham. This one was longer, more desperate. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. But Nat, we built a life together. 15 years can't just be thrown away because of one mistake. I'm begging you to give me another chance. Go to counseling with me. Let me prove I can be better. I love you. I've always loved you. Please don't give up on us. I read it 3 times. Once upon a time, these words might have meant something. But now they felt empty. You love me? He'd had a funny way of showing it when he was spending our anniversary with another woman. I didn't respond. Let him wonder what I was thinking. Let him feel a fraction of the uncertainty and pain I'd felt. The next morning, I woke up to find my car had a flat tire. Just one of those random Sunday morning surprises. I changed it myself, remembering the roadside emergency class I'd taken years ago when Graham was too busy to teach me. By the time I finished, I was dirty and sweaty but oddly proud. I'd handled it. By myself. Without calling anyone for help. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. I was capable. I was independent. I could deal with flat tires and broken marriages and whatever else life threw at me. Graham called while I was washing up. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, his voice was strained. I saw you transferred money out of our savings. That's our emergency fund, Nat. You can't just take it without discussing it with me first. Call me back. We need to talk about this. I deleted the message without responding. Patricia had told me to expect this reaction. Men like Graham didn't like losing control, and financial independence was the first step toward me having that control. Let him be upset. He'd been upset before. He'd get over it. I spent the rest of the day planning. Not planning to save my marriage, but planning to end it properly. I made lists of everything that needed to be done. Cancel joint credit cards. Update insurance policies. Figure out what to do about the house. Decide which pieces of furniture I wanted to keep and which ones he could have. It was overwhelming when I looked at the full picture. But I was learning to take things one step at a time. One decision. One action. One day closer to freedom. That was the night Graham showed up drunk at my door. I heard him before I saw him, banging on the door and shouting my name. When I looked through the peephole, he was swaying slightly, his eyes red. Nat, please. Please just talk to me. His voice was slurred. I can't do this anymore. I can't sleep. I can't work. I just need you to tell me we're going to be okay. I didn't open the door. Go home, Graham. You're drunk. I'm not that drunk. Just let me in. Please. No. Go sleep it off and we can talk tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll just ignore me again. He slumped against the door. You've been ignoring me for 2 weeks. I deserve to be heard. You deserve what I'm willing to give you, which right now is nothing. My hand was on my phone, ready to call the police if needed. Leave now or I'm calling 911. You'd call the cops on your own husband? You're not acting like my husband right now. You're acting like a drunk stranger on my porch. I kept my voice firm. Leave, Graham. Now. He must have heard something in my tone because he finally pushed himself away from the door. This isn't over, Natalie. We're not over. I watched through the window as he stumbled back to his car. For a moment I thought he might try to drive. But he just sat there, his head against the steering wheel. I called Clarissa. Can you come get Graham? He's drunk in his car outside my house and I don't want him driving. On my way, she said immediately. While I waited for her to arrive, I watched Graham through the window. He looked broken. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. But the larger part of me just felt tired. Tired of the drama. Tired of his inability to accept what was happening. Tired of carrying the weight of his choices along with my own. Clarissa pulled up 20 minutes later. I watched her knock on Graham's car window and talk to him. Eventually he got out and let her drive him somewhere. She texted me later to let me know she'd dropped him at his hotel. He cried the whole way, her message said. Kept saying he'd lost everything. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He had lost everything. Because he'd gambled it all on a 4-month affair and assumed I'd still be waiting when he was ready to come back. He'd been wrong. That night, I lay in bed and thought about the future. I couldn't see it clearly yet, didn't know exactly what it would look like. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, I was going to be okay. With or without Graham Mitchell, I was going to survive. Patricia's office called Tuesday morning to schedule our next meeting. I'd gathered months of financial records, credit card statements, and bank transactions. Spread across my dining room table, they told a story I was only beginning to fully understand. Graham had been stealing from our future to fund his affair. I arrived at Patricia's office at 10 o'clock sharp. Her assistant brought me coffee without asking how I took it because she remembered from last time. These small kindnesses from strangers felt more meaningful than they should have. Let's see what you've brought me, Patricia said, settling behind her desk. I handed her my laptop. I've organized everything by month. Red highlights are suspicious transactions. Yellow are definite affair-related expenses. Patricia scrolled through my spreadsheet, her expression unchanging. But I saw her eyebrow raise when she reached the 6-month totals. He spent $47,000 on this affair? She leaned back in her chair. In 6 months. That's just what I could verify. There's probably more. I'd cross-referenced his credit card statements with his calendar, matching charges to dates when he'd claimed to be working late or traveling for business. Jewelry purchases, hotel stays, restaurant bills. Some of it came from joint accounts. Most of it came from a credit card I didn't know he had. Joint funds used for an affair. Patricia's smile was sharp. That's going to play very well in court. There's more. I pulled out the printed credit card statements. He opened this card 3 months before the affair started. He's been planning this. Patricia studied the papers. Or he's done this before and learned to cover his tracks better. The thought had occurred to me. If Graham could lie for 4 months, what else had he lied about? How many business trips had actually been trips? How many late nights at the office had been late nights somewhere else? I might never know the full truth. I also found these, I said, handing her my phone. Text messages between him and Simone where they discuss using my discount at a home goods store. They redecorated her apartment with supplies I got them access to. Patricia actually laughed at that. The audacity. Using your employment benefits to furnish his mistress's home. Does that matter legally? It matters in terms of painting a picture of his character. Patricia made notes. This isn't just a man who had an affair. This is a man who systematically used marital assets to fund that affair while deceiving you about finances. That's financial infidelity on top of emotional infidelity. Can we get that money back? Some of it, potentially. If we can prove the expenditures were made without your knowledge or consent for non-marital purposes, the court can order him to reimburse the marital estate. She flipped through more papers. What about retirement accounts? Investment portfolios? I have printouts of everything I could access. He has a 401k through work that I don't have login information for, but I know it exists because I've seen the statements. Patricia nodded. We'll request full financial disclosure during discovery. He'll have to provide documentation for all assets, debts, income, and expenses. If he tries to hide anything, that's perjury. He wouldn't do that. Even now, I wanted to believe Graham had some integrity left. He might be a cheater, but he's not a criminal. You'd be surprised what people do when they're desperate. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I'm not saying he will hide assets. I'm saying we need to be prepared for that possibility. Men who lie about affairs often lie about money too. We spent the next hour going through every financial detail of my marriage. Our mortgage. Our car payments. The home equity line of credit Graham had taken out last year that I'd forgotten about. My retirement account. His retirement account. Our joint checking. Our individual savings accounts. By the end I felt sick. Not because we didn't have money, but because I'd been so blind to how he'd been managing it. Here's what I recommend, Patricia said. We need to freeze all joint credit cards immediately. You'll keep your own card, obviously, but shared cards need to be canceled or frozen to prevent him from running up debt you'd be responsible for. Won't that tip him off that I'm preparing for divorce? Possibly. But it's worth it to protect you. He's already proven he's willing to spend recklessly. She checked her notes. Have you thought about what you want to do with the house? The house. Our house. I'd been avoiding thinking about it because it hurt too much. We'd bought it together 8 years ago. We'd painted every room, installed new floors, updated the kitchen. I'd planted the garden. Graham had built the deck. Every corner held memories. But they were tainted memories now. I don't know if I can afford to keep it on my own, I admitted. Even if I get a better paying job. You might not have to afford it on your own. If you can't keep it and he can't either, we can force the sale and split the proceeds. Or if one of you wants to keep it, they buy out the other's half. Patricia watched me carefully. What do you want, Natalie? Emotionally, setting aside the financial aspect. I thought about it. Did I want to stay in the house where Graham and I had built our life? Where I'd wake up every morning and remember what we'd lost? Or did I want a fresh start somewhere new, somewhere without ghosts? I want him out, I said finally. I want to keep living there while the divorce processes. After that, I'll decide. Maybe I'll want to stay. Maybe I'll want to sell and find something that's just mine. That's reasonable. Patricia made more notes. We can request temporary sole occupancy of the marital residence. Given that he's already voluntarily staying elsewhere and given the circumstances of the affair, that should be granted easily. What about his stuff? Half of our closet still held Graham's clothes. His office was untouched. His golf club sat in the garage. He can arrange to collect his belongings. We'll give him a reasonable time frame to coordinate that collection. She paused. You don't have to be there when he does it. We can have a neutral third party supervise. The idea of Graham sorting through our shared life, deciding what to take and what to leave, made my chest tight. But it had to happen eventually. Okay, I said. What's next? Next we file. I'll have the papers drawn up by end of week. You'll need to sign them and then we'll have them served to Graham. Served? Like with a process server? Unless you want to hand them to him yourself. Patricia's tone suggested this was not recommended. A process server is cleaner. Less room for arguments about whether he actually received them. I imagined some stranger showing up at Graham's office with divorce papers. The humiliation he'd feel. Part of me felt guilty about that. But the larger part of me remembered him getting dressed for his date with Simone and felt nothing. Process server, I confirmed. Good. Now one more thing. Patricia's expression turned serious. Once we file, things are going to get harder before they get better. Graham is going to be angry. He's going to feel attacked. He might retaliate in ways you don't expect. Like what? Like trying to turn mutual friends against you. Like bad-mouthing you to his family or yours. Like making everything in this divorce as difficult as possible because he's hurt and wants you to hurt too. She leaned forward. I need you to be prepared for that. And I need you to not engage. Don't get into fights with him. Don't defend yourself to his friends or family. Let me handle the legal stuff and you focus on taking care of yourself. I can do that. I've been doing it for weeks already. I believe you can. Patricia stood, signaling the meeting was ending. You're one of the strongest clients I've worked with, Natalie. Most people come in here broken. You came in here ready to fight. I didn't feel strong. I felt exhausted. But I appreciated the sentiment. As I drove home, I thought about what Patricia had said about Graham retaliating. He'd already shown up drunk at my house. He'd been texting and calling constantly. What would he do when he got served with divorce papers? My phone rang. Graham. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately called him back. Patricia wanted documentation of all our communications, which meant I needed to control when and how they happened. Nat, finally. He sounded relieved when he answered. I've been trying to reach you. I'm busy, Graham. What do you need? I need to talk to you about the house. I was thinking I should move back in. We're both paying for it and it doesn't make sense for me to keep paying for a hotel too. No. What do you mean no? It's my house. It's our house and I don't want you here. I kept my voice level. You made your choice when you moved out. You don't get to come back just because hotel costs are adding up. This is ridiculous. You can't keep me out of my own home. Watch me. I pulled into my driveway. If you show up here uninvited again, I'll call the police. You can't do that. Try me. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking. Confrontation still scared me even when I knew I was in the right. But I was getting better at it. Inside, the house felt different. Emptier without Graham's presence, but also more mine. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. What would I keep? What would I change? If I stayed here after the divorce, would I repaint? Buy new furniture? Turn Graham's office into something else entirely? Or would I sell it all and start completely over? The uncertainty should have scared me. Instead, it felt like possibility. I spent the evening organizing more documents for Patricia. Bank statements. Tax returns. Property records. The paper trail of our marriage reduced to files and folders. It was depressing and liberating at the same time. Around 9 o'clock, my sister called. Hey, stranger, Rebecca said. You've been quiet lately. Everything okay? I hadn't told Rebecca about the divorce yet. She lived in California with her husband and 2 kids. We were close but not tell each other everything close. Still, she deserved to know. Graham and I are getting divorced, I said. Just putting it out there, direct and simple. Silence. Then, what? He had an affair. 4 months at least. Maybe longer. I found out on our anniversary. The words came easier now. I told the story enough times that it no longer felt like my story. It felt like something that had happened to someone else. Oh, Natalie. Rebecca's voice cracked. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'm surviving. Some days are better than others. Does Mom know? Not yet. I'm telling people gradually. Trying to process it myself first. We talked for an hour. Rebecca offered to fly out, but I told her not to. I didn't need family visits yet. I needed space to figure out who I was becoming. After we hung up, I made myself dinner and ate it in front of the TV. Simple things felt profound now. I was making choices just for myself. No one else to consider or accommodate. It was lonely, but it was also freeing. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Papers ready for your review tomorrow morning. Come by at 9 a.m. to sign. This was it. The point of no return. Once I signed those papers, Graham would be served. The divorce would become real in a way it hadn't been yet. I texted back, "I'll be there." Then I went to bed early and, surprisingly, slept through the night for the first time in weeks. I signed the divorce papers at 9:15 a.m. on a Thursday. My hand barely shook as I wrote my name on each page. Patricia witnessed my signature, then tucked everything into a manila envelope. "The process server will deliver these to Graham's office today around noon," she said. "I've arranged for them to be served during lunch when fewer colleagues will be around." Professional courtesy. Thank you. Though part of me wanted him to be embarrassed in front of everyone, the vindictive part one was learning to acknowledge. "What are you going to do for the rest of the day?" Patricia asked. "Work probably. I have a client presentation this afternoon." "Good. Stay busy. He'll likely try to contact you immediately after being served." She handed me a card. "If he shows up at your house or workplace, call this number first. It's courthouse security. They can issue an emergency restraining order if needed." I took the card hoping I wouldn't need it, but I'd learned to prepare for the worst where Graham was concerned. I went to work and tried to focus on my design projects. But at 12:43 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Graham. I silenced it and sent the call to Patricia's office line instead, following her instructions to redirect all his contact attempts. He called 6 more times over the next hour. Each call went to Patricia's voicemail. At 2:15 during my client presentation, my phone vibrated with a text message. I ignored it until after the meeting ended at 3. "How could you do this?" Graham's message read. "How could you humiliate me like this? Do you have any idea what this looks like? I was in a meeting with the VP and they had to pull me out so some stranger could hand me divorce papers in front of the entire office." I didn't respond. Another text came through. "Call me. We need to talk about this. You can't just blindside me like this." Then another, "I'm coming to the house. We're going to sort this out face to face." I forwarded all the messages to Patricia, then called her office. "He says he's coming to the house," I told her assistant. "Ms. Hollis is in court, but she said to tell you to go somewhere public if he shows up. A coffee shop, a bookstore, anywhere with witnesses. Do not engage with him alone." I left work early and drove to the library instead of home. I found a quiet corner table and pulled out my laptop, pretending to work while actually just watching the clock. Would Graham really show up at the house? Or was he just making empty threats? My phone rang at 4:30. A number I didn't recognize. "Hello. Natalie, it's Margaret. Graham's mother. My mother-in-law for the past 15 years. Graham called me very upset. He says you're divorcing him?" I closed my eyes. Of course he'd called his mother. "Yes, we're getting divorced." "But why? What happened? You two have always been so solid." I could tell her the truth. Graham had an affair. He missed our anniversary to be with another woman. He spent our money on hotels and jewelry for someone else. But that felt like airing dirty laundry even if it was the truth. "We grew apart," I said instead. "It's been coming for a while. That happens to every couple." Margaret's voice took on that lecturing tone I'd heard so many times over the years. "Marriage takes work. You can't just give up when things get hard." "I'm not giving up. I'm acknowledging when something is over. Graham loves you. He told me he's been trying to work things out, but you won't even talk to him." "Margaret, I appreciate your concern, but this is between Graham and me." My voice stayed level. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, but I need you to respect that this is my decision." "Your decision?" She sounded affronted. "Marriage is a partnership. You don't get to just decide it's over without his input." "Actually, I do. That's how divorce works. This is that career of yours talking." Now her tone turned judgmental. "You young women today, you're all so independent and self-sufficient that you forget what compromise means. Graham needs a wife who supports him, not someone who's always putting her job first." I felt my temper rising. "Graham had an affair, Margaret. He's been seeing someone else for months. He chose to be with her instead of me on our 15th anniversary. So forgive me if I don't feel like compromising with someone who couldn't even keep his wedding vows." Silence. Then quietly, "He told me that was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't. But if you want to believe his version, that's your choice." I stood up, gathering my things. "I'm sorry this is painful for you. I know you love your son. But I can't stay in a marriage with someone who betrayed me. I hope you can understand that." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. I'd never spoken to Margaret like that before. I'd always been the good daughter-in-law, swallowing my opinions to keep the peace. Not anymore. I drove home as the sun was setting. Graham's car sat in my driveway. I almost kept driving. But this was my house. He didn't get to stake claim to it just because he was upset about facing consequences. I parked on the street and approached carefully. Graham was sitting on the porch steps, his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard my car door close. "You served me with divorce papers at work," he said. His voice was flat. In front of my colleagues. The VP was there, Nat. He was right there when the process server called my name. "You had an affair," I replied. "I don't have much sympathy for your embarrassment." He stood up. "So this is revenge? Humiliating me is supposed to make you feel better? It's not about revenge. It's about ending our marriage legally." I walked past him to the door. "You need to leave." "Why are you doing this?" He followed me. "We could have worked this out. We could have gone to therapy, talked through our problems. Instead, you went behind my back and hired a lawyer. You went behind my back and slept with someone else for 4 months." I unlocked the door but didn't go inside. "Don't lecture me about honesty, Graham." "I made a mistake." "One mistake." "No. You made hundreds of mistakes. Every time you texted Simone. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you used our money to take her out to dinner." I turned to face him. "And you know what the biggest mistake was? Thinking I'd still be here waiting when you were ready to come back. You're my wife. Not for much longer." The words felt powerful. Final. "Sign the papers, Graham. Let's both move on." "I don't want to move on. I want my marriage." "Then you should have thought about that before you destroyed it." I went inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment before finally walking back to his car. He sat in the driveway for another 20 minutes. I didn't watch him the whole time. I went about my evening routine, making dinner and changing clothes and ignoring his presence outside. Eventually, I heard his car start and drive away. Clarissa called at 8. "How are you holding up?" "I heard Graham got served today." "How did you hear?" "Rebecca told me. She said you guys talked last night and she wanted to make sure someone was checking on you." Clarissa paused. "I'm proud of you, you know. A month ago you were devastated. Now you're filing for divorce and standing your ground. That takes strength." "I don't feel strong. I feel tired." "Those can be the same thing sometimes." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch. The garden needed weeding again. The grass needed mowing. Normal maintenance things that kept going regardless of divorce or heartbreak. Life kept going. That was the strange part. The world didn't stop because my marriage ended. Bills still needed paying. Work still needed doing. The house still needed cleaning. Everything just continued, indifferent to personal tragedy. My phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. Graham's attorney reached out about initial settlement discussions. "I've scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday. You don't have to attend if you don't want to." I wrote back, "I'll be there. I want to face this head on." "Good," she replied. "Bring your armor. It's going to get ugly." I spent the next several days in a strange limbo. Work continued. Life continued. But everything felt like I was watching it happen from a distance. I went through the motions while my brain processed the reality that my marriage was actually ending. Graham sent emails now instead of calling. Long, rambling messages about how we were making a mistake. How we owed it to 15 years together to try harder. How he'd do anything, change anything, be anything I needed. But he never actually said what had changed. He never explained why this time would be different. He just made promises without substance, hoping I'd accept them because I was tired of fighting. I wasn't tired enough. On Monday I got my first job interview request. A senior design position at a prestigious firm downtown. Better salary, better benefits, better opportunities for advancement. The kind of job I'd always wanted but had never pursued because it would have required more evening hours and Graham had complained when I worked late. I scheduled the interview for Wednesday morning. Tuesday's settlement meeting went exactly as Patricia predicted. Graham's attorney tried to paint me as unreasonable. They offered a settlement that would leave me with significantly less than half of our marital assets. "Your client committed adultery," Patricia said calmly. "He used marital funds to support that affair. The only unreasonable person in this room is the one who thought that was acceptable behavior." Graham's attorney tried again. "My client is willing to forgive the harsh manner in which he was served with these papers. He's willing to overlook Mrs. Mitchell's refusal to attempt reconciliation. All he asks is a fair division of assets. Then he'll accept a 50-50 split of everything including his retirement accounts." Patricia slid a counteroffer across the table. This is fair. This is what the law requires. Accept it or we'll let a judge decide. I sat silently through the whole meeting. Graham couldn't meet my eyes. When his attorney suggested we take a break so they could discuss privately, Graham finally spoke. Can I talk to Natalie alone for a minute? No, Patricia and his attorney said at the same time. Please. Just 5 minutes. Patricia looked at me. I shook my head. My client declines, Patricia said. We left shortly after. In the parking garage, Patricia turned to me. That was brutal, I know. But you did great. Staying quiet, staying calm. He wanted a reaction and you didn't give him one. I don't have any reactions left to give. I clicked my car remote. I just want this over. It will be. In a few more months you'll be free. Free. The word sounded so simple. But freedom was more complicated than just ending a marriage. Freedom meant rebuilding everything from scratch. Figure out who I was without the identity of being Graham's wife. Creating a life that was entirely my own. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. That night, I went home and deleted every photo of Graham from my social media. I packed up the last of his belongings still scattered around the house. I took down our wedding photos and stored them in the garage. By midnight, the house looked different. Less like the home we'd shared and more like the home I was building alone. It hurt. But it also felt right. I was ready to start over. Graham contested the divorce. Of course he did. His attorney filed a response claiming irreconcilable differences were my fault due to my refusal to participate in marital counseling. They painted me as cold and unforgiving, unwilling to work on our relationship. Patricia found it amusing. They're grasping at straws, she said when we met to discuss the response. Adultery is a no-fault ground for divorce in this state. It doesn't matter if you refused counseling. You cheated. End of story. But it meant more delays. More paperwork. More meetings. The divorce I'd hoped would be final in 6 months stretched toward 8, then 10. Graham's attempts to contact me decreased as weeks passed. The desperate phone calls stopped. The long emails became shorter and more formal, usually coordinating through lawyers about logistics. He came to collect his remaining belongings on a Saturday morning with his brother present. I stayed at Clarissa's house while they loaded up a moving truck. He took the couch. Clarissa texted me with a photo. The ugly leather one you hated. He can have it, I texted back. I'd already ordered a new couch in a style I actually liked. Blue fabric instead of dark leather. Something bright and comfortable and completely mine. My interview at the design firm went well. They offered me the position with a 40% salary increase. I accepted immediately. My last day at my old job was bittersweet, but mostly it felt like freedom. I was shedding the last pieces of the life I'd built around Graham's schedule and needs. The new job was challenging in the best way. My coworkers were talented and driven. My projects were interesting and high profile. I worked long hours, but now it was because I wanted to, not because I was avoiding an empty house. Though the house wasn't empty anymore. I'd started filling it with new things. New art for the walls. New plants for the living room. New dishes to replace the wedding china I'd packed away. Each purchase felt like reclaiming space. My mother finally found out about the divorce when Rebecca accidentally mentioned it during a family video call. Mom called me immediately after, her voice tight with hurt. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. I was processing, I said. I needed time to figure out how I felt before dealing with how everyone else felt. I'm your mother. You should have told me. You're right. I'm sorry. We talked for 2 hours. Mom was angry at Graham, of course, but she was also worried about me. Was I eating? Sleeping? Taking care of myself? Did I need money? Did I want to come home to Virginia for a while? I assured her I was managing. And I was. Some days were harder than others, but I was genuinely okay. Better than okay, actually. I was discovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I started taking a pottery class on Wednesday evenings. Something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. The instructor was patient, the other students were friendly, and there was something meditative about shaping clay with my hands. Creating something tangible from nothing. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. People who'd drifted away because Graham didn't enjoy their company or because couple activities had replaced individual friendships. We met for coffee and dinners and weekend hikes. They asked about the divorce, but they also asked about me. What I was doing, what I was planning, who I was becoming. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I was figuring it out. Graham's life, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, wasn't going as well. The affair with Simone had fallen apart within weeks of him ending things with me. Apparently, she'd expected him to leave his wife and commit fully to her. When she found out he'd tried to reconcile with me first, she'd ended things. He'd tried to get her back according to the rumor mill. She'd refused. Now he was alone, living in a small apartment, spending his evenings drinking according to someone who'd run into him at a bar. I felt a complicated mix of emotions hearing that. Satisfaction that he was facing consequences. Sadness that it had come to this. Relief that I wasn't responsible for fixing him anymore. "Do you miss him?" Clarissa asked me one night over wine. I thought about it honestly. I miss the idea of him. I miss having a partner. I miss the security of thinking my future was planned out. But do I miss the actual man who could lie to me for months and spend our money on another woman? No. I don't miss him at all. Good answer. I spent so many years being Graham's wife that I forgot how to just be Natalie. I swirled the wine in my glass. I'm getting to know her again. She's not who I thought she'd be. Better or worse? Different. Stronger maybe. More independent. Less willing to compromise on things that matter. The divorce moved through the legal system slowly but steadily. We reached a settlement agreement after 3 months of negotiations. 50-50 split of all marital assets. I kept the house but bought out Graham's half of the equity with funds from my share of his retirement account. He kept his car and his retirement savings. We divided furniture and belongings with surprisingly little conflict by that point. We were both just tired of fighting. The final court date was set for February, 9 months after I'd signed the initial papers. I'd be divorced before what would have been our 16th anniversary. There was poetic irony in that. Graham tried one last time to change my mind. He showed up at my pottery class 3 weeks before the court date. I looked up from the vase I was shaping to find him standing in the doorway watching me. "Can we talk?" he asked. I wiped my clay-covered hands on my apron. "Not here. Outside." He followed me to the parking lot. The January air was cold, but I didn't invite him into my car. "What do you want, Graham?" "I wanted to see you." He looked different. Thinner. His hair needed cutting. "You look good." "Happy." "I am happy. Even though you're about to be divorced?" "Especially because I'm about to be divorced." I crossed my arms. "Why are you really here?" "I was hoping you might reconsider. Before it's final. We could still stop this." His voice was pleading. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we had something real, Nat, 15 years of real. That has to count for something." "It counted for a lot," I said. "But you destroyed it. And I'm not interested in rebuilding on that broken foundation. I never stopped loving you. Love isn't enough if you don't respect the person you're claiming to love." I softened my tone slightly. "Graham, you need to let this go. Sign the papers. Show up to court. Let us both move forward. I don't know how to move forward without you. You'll figure it out. Same way I did." I turned to go back inside. "Goodbye, Graham." "That's it? Just goodbye." I looked back at him one last time. The man I'd married at 23. The man I'd built a life with. The man who'd broken my heart and taught me I was strong enough to survive it. "That's it," I said. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do. But I'm not going to be part of that search." I went back to my pottery class and didn't look out the window to see if he left. My instructor helped me center my clay again, and I focused on the feel of it spinning under my hands. Creating something new from shapeless material. It felt like a metaphor for my whole life right now. The night before the court date, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The good years and the bad ones. The joy and the heartbreak. The woman I'd been when I got married and the woman I was becoming through divorce. I'd loved Graham Mitchell. I'd met my wedding vows. I'd planned to grow old with him, to build a lifetime together. But life had other plans. And now so did I. At 7 a.m. on February 14th, Valentine's Day of all days, I put on my best red suit and drove to the courthouse. Patricia met me at the entrance. "You ready?" she asked. "I'm ready." The hearing took less than 30 minutes. Graham was there with his attorney. He looked tired, set. But he didn't try to speak to me. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom while the judge reviewed our settlement agreement. "I find this agreement to be fair and equitable," the judge said. "The marriage between Natalie Riley and Graham Mitchell is hereby dissolved. You are both free to marry again." That was it. 15 years of marriage ended with a gavel strike and legal paperwork. We signed the final documents. The judge signed. Patricia collected our copies. I walked out of that courthouse a free woman. Graham caught up with me in the parking lot. "Natalie, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "What?" I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. I hope you can forgive me someday. I did turn then. I forgive you, Graham. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. But that doesn't mean I'll forget. And it doesn't mean we'll be friends. I know. He nodded. Be happy, okay? That's all I want for you. I intend to be. I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there alone in the parking lot. Then I turned the corner and he disappeared from view. Patricia called as I was driving home. How are you feeling? Free, I said. And I meant it. The first thing I did as a divorced woman was sleep for 12 hours straight. I came home from the courthouse, changed into comfortable clothes and fell into bed. When I woke up, it was morning again and I felt lighter than I had in months. The second thing I did was buy flowers. Big, colorful bouquets that I arranged in vases throughout the house. Flowers just for me because I wanted them. No special occasion required. The third thing I did was start planning my future for real. I'd been offered a promotion at my new job, a position leading the creative team. More responsibility, more money, more opportunity to make an impact. I accepted immediately. My new boss was thrilled. You've come in here like a storm, she told me during our one-on-one meeting. Your designs are innovative. Your work ethic is impressive. I'm glad you joined our team. I thanked her, but inside I was thinking about how different I felt at this job compared to my old one. I'd stayed at my previous firm partly because it was comfortable, partly because the hours worked well with Graham's schedule. I've been playing it safe. No more. I threw myself into my work with an intensity one hadn't felt in years. Not because I was running from something, but because I was running toward something. Building a career that mattered to me. Creating work I was proud of. Establishing myself as someone talented and capable, not just Graham Mitchell's ex-wife. My personal life transformed too. I'd always been social, but during my marriage, most of my friendships had become couple friendships. Now I was rebuilding my social circle with intention. People who knew me as Natalie, not as half of a unit. I joined a book club that met monthly at a local cafe. I started attending networking events for designers. I volunteered at a nonprofit that provided free design services to small businesses owned by women and minorities. I said yes to invitations I would have previously declined because they didn't fit into our couple schedule. My Saturday pottery class became a highlight of my week. I wasn't particularly talented at it, but I loved the process. The instructor, a woman in her 60s named Ruth, became a friend. She'd been divorced twice herself. Each divorce taught me something important, she told me one evening while we waited for our pieces to come out of the kiln. The first one taught me I could survive on my own. The second one taught me I could thrive on my own. Which one was harder? I asked. The first by far. Because I didn't know yet that I'd be okay. Once you know you can survive anything, the fear loses its power. I thought about that a lot. I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine in my relationship. Graham's betrayal. The public humiliation. The painful process of untangling 15 years of shared life. And I was still standing. Still functioning. Still moving forward. The fear had lost its power over me. I took up running. Not because I needed to lose weight or get in shape, but because I liked the feeling of pushing my body, of setting goals and achieving them. I started with a mile. Then 2. Then 5. By spring I was training for a half marathon. My house transformed too. I repainted the living room in a warm green I'd always wanted instead of the neutral beige Graham had insisted on. I bought new bedding in colors I loved. I turned Graham's old office into a craft room where I could work on personal design projects and pottery. Every change made the space feel more mine. I hung my own art on the walls. Not expensive gallery pieces, but things I'd created in my pottery class and paintings I'd tried my hand at during a weekend workshop. They weren't perfect, but they were mine. Evidence of my creativity, my growth, my willingness to try new things even if I wasn't immediately good at them. My mother visited in March. She'd been worried about how I was doing despite my assurances over the phone. She needed to see for herself that I was truly okay. Your house looks different, she said, looking around. Brighter. I've made some changes. I showed her the craft room, the new furniture, the garden I'd expanded in the backyard. You seem different too. Mom studied me carefully. More confident, maybe? I feel different. Like I'm finally becoming the person I was supposed to be before I got distracted trying to be the person someone else needed. Mom hugged me. I'm proud of you. This hasn't been easy, but you've handled it with such grace. I don't know about grace. Some days I'm still angry. Some days I'm sad. But most days now I'm just okay. And okay feels pretty good after everything. We spent the weekend together, cooking and talking and visiting local attractions. Mom told me about her own marriage struggles with Dad that I'd been too young to notice. How they'd almost divorced when I was in college but had worked through it. "I'm not saying you made the wrong choice," she clarified. "Graham's affair was a deal breaker. I'm just saying marriage is hard for everyone. The fantasy of forever after rarely matches the reality." "Do you ever regret staying with Dad?" I asked. "Sometimes. Mostly when he leaves wet towels on the bathroom floor." She smiled. "But no, not really. Our problems were fixable. Yours and Graham's weren't. You made the right choice." Her validation meant more than I'd expected. I'd worried she'd judge me for divorcing. But she understood. And knowing that eased something I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. At work, my team landed a major client, a startup that needed complete brand development. It was exactly the kind of high-profile, challenging project I'd been hoping for. We pitched our concepts in late April. They chose our design. The celebration dinner afterward felt significant. My boss raised her glass in a toast. To Natalie, whose vision made this possible. Everyone cheered. I felt a swell of pride completely unconnected to anyone's approval but my own. This was my success. My work. My career. I was building something that couldn't be taken away or devalued by someone else's choices. In May, I ran my first half marathon. Clarissa and Rebecca came to cheer me on. I finished in just under 2 hours and 30 minutes, not impressive for serious runners but a personal victory for me. I'd set a goal and achieved it through consistent effort and determination. Just like my divorce. Just like my career. Just like my entire life rebuilt. "You're kind of a badass now," Clarissa told me at the post-race brunch. "When did that happen?" "Gradually." I stretched my tired legs. "And then all at once." Summer brought more changes. I started dating, casually and without expectations. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with men I met through apps or mutual friends. It was strange at first, being single again after so many years. But it was also exciting. Discovering what I liked in a partner now that I was a different person than I'd been at 23. I went on a date with a teacher named Jason who made me laugh. Another with a software developer named Terrence who shared my love of documentaries. A third with an architect named Chris who had also recently divorced. None of them turned into relationships and that was okay. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was complete on my own. I was just open to meeting people and seeing what developed naturally. I heard about Graham occasionally through mutual acquaintances. He'd moved to a different city for a new job. Apparently, the affair scandal had hurt his reputation at his old company. The fresh start in a new place made sense. I felt nothing hearing that news. Not satisfaction, not sadness. Just a mild curiosity about someone who used to be important to me but wasn't anymore. Like hearing news about a distant acquaintance. That emotional indifference felt like the final stage of healing. My pottery improved significantly. Ruth taught me advanced techniques. I created pieces I was actually proud of, including a set of dishes that I used for a dinner party I hosted in July. 8 people around my dining room table, eating off plates I'd made, drinking wine from cups I'd crafted. It felt symbolic. "You're glowing," one friend told me that night. "Divorce looks good on you." "It's not the divorce," I corrected. "It's the freedom to be myself." By August, I realized I'd stopped thinking about Graham regularly. Weeks would go by without him crossing my mind. The hurt had faded to a distant memory, like a scar that had healed completely. Still there if I looked for it but not affecting my daily life. I'd moved on. Genuinely, completely moved on. I celebrated by booking a trip to Portugal. 2 weeks, solo travel, exploring Lisbon and Porto and the coastal towns in between. My first major vacation alone. My first trip planned entirely around what I wanted to see and do. "You're going alone?" my coworker asked when I mentioned it. "I prefer it that way." And I meant it. No compromising on itineraries. No worrying about anyone else's comfort or preferences. Just me, my camera, and whatever adventures I found. The trip was transformative. I wandered through museums and markets. I took a cooking class and learned to make traditional Portuguese dishes. I hiked along coastal paths and took hundreds of photos. I talked to locals and fellow travelers and spent evenings alone in cafes writing in a journal I'd started keeping. On my last night in Lisbon, I sat at an outdoor restaurant watching the sunset over the Tagus River. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, crying over divorce papers and wondering how to survive. She seemed like a stranger now. I'd done more than survive. I built a whole new life. A better life, one that reflected who I actually was instead of who I'd tried to be for someone else. I raised my glass of wine to the sunset, to Portugal, to myself. Here's to second chances, I said quietly. And to becoming who you're meant to be. When I got home 2 weeks later, I felt refreshed and energized, ready for whatever came next. My house welcomed me back, familiar and comfortable and entirely mine. I unpacked my bags and looked around at the life I'd created. It was good. Really good. And it was just getting started. I wasn't looking for revenge. I genuinely moved on, built a new life, found happiness in ways I hadn't expected. But sometimes karma delivers without you asking. I found out about Graham's downfall through LinkedIn of all places. I'd stopped checking his profile months ago, had actually unfollowed him so his updates wouldn't appear in my feed. But Clarissa sent me a screenshot one September afternoon with the caption, "You need to see this." Graham's profile no longer showed his regional director position. His new job title read Sales Associate, at a company I'd never heard of. A significant step down from where he'd been. What happened? I texted Clarissa. Get this, she replied. Apparently the whole affair thing caught up with him at work. Simone filed a complaint with HR about him harassing her after they broke up. The investigation uncovered that he'd been using company funds for personal expenses during their relationship. Hotels, dinners, all of it. I stared at my phone. I'd known Graham used our personal money for the affair. I hadn't considered that he might have been using company money too. They fired him, Clarissa continued. 3 months ago. He couldn't find anything comparable because word got around in the industry. He had to take what he could get. I should have felt satisfaction. This was consequences catching up with someone who'd hurt me. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that Graham had destroyed not just our marriage but his entire career because he couldn't control himself. Sad that someone who'd once been my best friend had become this person I didn't recognize. Do you want to know more? Clarissa asked. No, I replied. And I meant it. Graham's problems weren't my problems anymore. I'd moved on. Whatever happened to him now was the result of his own choices. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it over the next few days. How quickly everything could fall apart when you made one bad decision after another. Graham hadn't just had an affair. He'd lied about it, stolen company funds, harassed Simone after she ended things, and probably a dozen other mistakes I didn't know about. Each bad choice had compounded the previous one until his entire life collapsed. Meanwhile, my life had steadily improved. Better job, better salary, better mental health. New hobbies, new friends, new adventures. I'd faced the hardest period of my life and come out stronger. The difference was I'd been honest with myself about what I needed to do. I'd made hard choices, yes. Filing for divorce had been terrifying. But I'd done it anyway. I'd moved forward instead of staying stuck in something that wasn't working. Graham had made the opposite choice at every turn. He'd stayed in a marriage he was unhappy in instead of addressing the problems. He'd had an affair instead of being honest about wanting out. He tried to keep both relationships going instead of choosing. He'd lied and stolen and harassed instead of accepting consequences. Now he was paying for all of it. My phone rang a week later. Graham's mother. Natalie, I owe you an apology, Margaret said without preamble. I believed Graham when he said the affair was a misunderstanding. I blamed you for not working harder to save your marriage. But I've learned things since then that changed my perspective. What things? I asked, curious despite myself. He lost his job. Did you know that? Her voice was tight with disappointment. Not just because of the affair but because he was stealing from his company. Using corporate cards for personal expenses. They found hundreds of transactions he couldn't account for. I didn't know the specifics. That was true. Clarissa's information had been secondhand. He's moved back home with us temporarily while he looks for something stable. Seeing him every day, I've realized how much he's struggling. How much he threw away for a relationship that lasted a few months. Margaret paused. You tried to tell me. When you said he had an affair, that he'd betrayed you. I didn't want to believe my son could do something like that. I understand. He's your son. Of course you wanted to defend him. That's generous of you. Margaret sighed. I'm calling to apologize for how I spoke to you. And to thank you for getting out when you did. I see now what you would have been dealing with if you'd stayed. After we hung up, I felt oddly grateful for that conversation. Not because I needed Margaret's validation, but because it confirmed what I'd already known. Leaving Graham had been the right choice. Not just because of the affair, but because of who he'd proven himself to be when faced with consequences. He'd collapsed under pressure while I'd grown stronger. My pottery class had an exhibition in October where students could display their work. I submitted 3 pieces, a large vase with intricate glazing, a set of nesting bowls and a decorative plate with abstract designs. Nothing revolutionary but work I was proud of. The exhibition was small, held in a local gallery over one weekend. But walking through and seeing my pieces displayed alongside others, with little cards bearing my name beneath them, felt significant. I was creating. I was contributing. I was building something meaningful with my own hands. Graham wouldn't have understood that. During our marriage, he'd viewed my hobbies as cute but ultimately frivolous. He'd never taken my creative interests seriously. Now those interests were becoming central to who I was. At the exhibition opening, I met a woman named Donna who ran a small design firm focused on sustainable products. She loved my work and asked if I'd be interested in consulting on a project developing eco-friendly home goods. "Your aesthetic is exactly what we're looking for," she said, studying my vase. "Organic but modern. Approachable but sophisticated." I gave her my business card. 2 weeks later, she hired me for a 6-month consulting contract. The pay was good, but more importantly, it aligned with values I cared about. Another piece of my new life falling into place. I heard through mutual friends that Simone had moved to a different state. Apparently, the fallout from the affair had been difficult for her too. She'd been painted as a homewrecker by people who knew Graham and me. Her professional reputation had suffered. She decided a fresh start elsewhere made sense. I felt a complicated sympathy for her. Yes, she'd knowingly pursued a married man. But she'd also been lied to. Graham had probably told her our marriage was already over, that we were separated in all but paperwork. Classic affair playbook. Both of us had believed him. Both of us had learned the hard way who he really was. The holidays approached. My first major holiday season as a divorced woman. I'd been dreading it slightly, the awkwardness of family gatherings and questions about my personal life. But Rebecca invited me to spend Thanksgiving in California with her family. 2 weeks in the sun with my sister, her husband, and their kids sounded perfect. "Are you seeing anyone?" Rebecca asked during our planning call. Casually. "Nothing serious. I'd been on more dates over the past few months. Some good, some awkward, all part of figuring out what I wanted in a partner now. I'm not rushing into anything." "Good. You've got time." Rebecca paused. "How are you feeling about everything? The divorce, Graham, all of it?" "Honestly, I barely think about it anymore. I'm so focused on my own life that he just doesn't factor in." "That's healthy. I'm proud of you, Nat. You could have let this break you. Instead, you let it make you stronger." I thought about that later. Had the divorce made me stronger? Or had I always been this strong and just never needed to prove it to myself? Maybe it was both. Graham's betrayal had forced me to discover capabilities I hadn't known I had. If he hadn't cheated, I might have stayed comfortably in a mediocre marriage for decades. I'd never have pushed for the promotion at work. Never have traveled alone. Never have discovered pottery or running or any of the other things that now brought me joy. I wasn't grateful for the pain he caused, but I was grateful for who I'd become in response to it. My half-marathon training paid off in November when I completed my second race, this time finishing 15 minutes faster than my first. The sense of accomplishment was incredible. Setting goals and achieving them through consistent effort had become my new normal. December brought an unexpected opportunity. A design magazine wanted to feature my story, successful career woman who'd reinvented herself after divorce. At first, I hesitated. Did I want to publicly share my personal story? But then I thought about other women going through similar situations. Women who might read my story and realize they could survive too. Women who needed to know that divorce wasn't the end of their lives but potentially the beginning of something better. I agreed to the interview. The journalist was thoughtful and respectful. The article, published in January, focused not on the drama of the divorce but on the transformation that followed. My career growth. My new hobbies. My solo travel. The life I'd built from scratch. Natalie Riley didn't just survive her divorce, the article concluded. She used it as a catalyst for becoming the person she'd always wanted to be. The response was overwhelming. Women reached out on social media sharing their own stories. I received emails from strangers thanking me for being honest about the difficulties and the triumphs. A local television station asked me to appear on a morning show segment about life after divorce. I'd become, accidentally, an inspiration. And while that felt strange, it also felt purposeful. If my story could help even one person find the courage to leave a bad situation, then sharing it had been worth the vulnerability. Graham called me for the first time in 6 months after the article came out. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "I saw your interview," he said. His voice sounded strained. "You look really happy." "I am happy. I'm glad." A long pause. I know I don't have the right to say this, but I'm proud of you. For everything you've accomplished. You deserve better than what I gave you. Yes, I did. No point in pretending otherwise. I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out why I sabotaged everything good in my life. It's not an excuse, just explanation. I had issues I never dealt with, and I let them destroy us. I hope therapy helps you. And I meant it. Not because I wanted him back or even wanted a friendship with him, but because everyone deserved to work on becoming better. I don't expect forgiveness, Graham continued. I just wanted you to know that I see now what I threw away. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I forgive you, Graham. The words came easily now. Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger wasn't serving me. Thank you. His voice cracked. Be happy, Natalie. You deserve all the happiness in the world. After we hung up, I felt at peace. That chapter of my life was truly closed. Graham was becoming someone in my past tense, someone I used to know. The hurt had healed. The anger had faded. All that remained was acceptance and a genuine wish that he'd find whatever he needed to be a better person. But that was his journey. Mine was already well underway. Spring came early that year, bringing with it a sense of renewal that felt personal. I'd been divorced for just over a year. I'd survived not just the end of my marriage but the complete reconstruction of my life. And I hadn't just survived. I'd flourished. My consulting work with Donna's firm had gone so well that she offered me a partnership. You're too talented to keep as just a consultant, she said over lunch in March. I want you to be part of building this company. I accepted. Owning equity in a business I believed in felt like the ultimate validation of the path I'd chosen. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was an owner, a decision maker, a leader. My pottery had evolved too. Ruth nominated one of my pieces for a regional craft competition. I didn't win, but being selected as a finalist was thrilling. My work was displayed in a gallery for 2 months. 3 of my pieces sold. I was an artist. Not a professional one, not someone who made their living from pottery, but someone whose creative work had value to others. That distinction mattered to me. In April, I turned 39. My birthday fell on a Saturday, and I decided to celebrate by hosting a party. Not a quiet dinner, but a real party with music and dancing and all the people who'd become important to me over the past year. My house filled with friends. Clarissa and Rebecca, of course. Co-workers from my design firm. People from my book club and pottery class. Neighbors I'd gotten to know. Women from my running group. The eclectic mix of people who now made up my social circle. Look at this, Clarissa said, gesturing around the crowded living room. A year ago you were signing divorce papers. Now you're throwing parties and thriving. This is incredible. It is, isn't it? I surveyed my home, my friends, my life. I almost can't believe I'm the same person who was so devastated last year. You're not the same person. That's the point. She was right. The woman who'd watched her husband dress for a date with another woman on their anniversary wouldn't recognize the woman I'd become. That Natalie had been defined by her marriage, by her role as Graham's wife. This Natalie was defined by her own accomplishments and interests and relationships. I like this version better. The party lasted until midnight. After everyone left and I was cleaning up alone, I felt profoundly grateful. Not for the divorce itself, but for the life it had pushed me to build. I'd been comfortable before. Now I was genuinely happy. There was a difference. In May, I got an email from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Janelle and she'd read my magazine interview. She was going through a divorce after her husband's affair and felt like she was drowning. How did you do it? She wrote. How did you survive when everything felt impossible? I spent an hour crafting my response. I told her about therapy and friends and taking things one day at a time. About being kind to herself and allowing herself to grieve while also looking forward. About making small changes that added up to transformation. About discovering that she was stronger than she thought. The hardest part is believing you'll be okay, I wrote. But you will be. Not immediately. Not even soon. But eventually you'll wake up and realize you've built a whole new life. And it will be better than what you had before because it will be entirely yours. Janelle wrote back thanking me. Over the next few months, we exchanged occasional emails as she navigated her own divorce. Helping someone else through the process I'd been through felt meaningful. My pain had a purpose now, had helped me develop empathy and wisdom I could share. I started a blog in June writing about life after divorce. Not advice exactly, but reflections on my own experience. The challenges and victories. The loneliness and freedom. The grief and joy. I called it Building After Broken, and posted weekly. The response surprised me. Within 3 months, I had thousands of regular readers. People commented sharing their own stories. The blog became a community of people supporting each other through difficult transitions. You should write a book, Clarissa suggested when the blog hit 10,000 followers. Maybe someday. I wasn't ready for that yet, but the idea intrigued me. My story might help more people if I expanded it beyond blog posts. I went on a date in July with a man named Eric who worked in environmental policy. We'd met through mutual friends at a summer barbecue. He was kind and intelligent with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. We clicked immediately. I need to be upfront about something, I told him on our third date. I'm recently divorced. Like really recently. I'm not looking for anything serious right now. That's fine, Eric said. I'm recently out of a long-term relationship too. How about we just enjoy each other's company and see what happens? We dated casually through the summer and fall. Nothing intense, no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's time. He introduced me to hiking trails I'd never explored. I took him to pottery classes and design exhibitions. We traveled to a music festival together and spent a weekend camping in the mountains. It was easy, fun, comfortable without being complacent. I wasn't in love with him and he wasn't in love with me. But we genuinely liked each other and that felt like enough for now. Are you happy? Rebecca asked during one of our regular video calls. Yeah, I really am. I thought about it. Not deliriously happy every second, but consistently content in a way I wasn't before. Like my life actually fits me now instead of me trying to fit into someone else's vision of what my life should be. That's the dream, Rebecca said. Building a life that actually suits you. My consulting partnership with Donna's firm became official in September. We signed papers making me a 30% owner. That night, I celebrated alone with a good bottle of wine in my journal, reflecting on how far I'd come. A year and a half ago, I'd been sitting in a lawyer's office planning my divorce. Now I was a business owner. A published writer. An artist whose work sold in galleries. A runner who'd completed multiple races. A traveler who'd explored Portugal alone and was planning a trip to Iceland for the following spring. I'd rebuilt my entire life from the foundation up. And the structure I'd created was solid. Graham reached out one more time in October. Just a simple text. I heard about your business partnership. Congratulations. You always deserved recognition for your talent. I responded with a simple thank you, and nothing more. There was nothing more to say. We were truly finished, not with anger or resentment, but with the simple acknowledgement that we'd both moved on to separate lives. I heard through the grapevine that he'd started dating someone new. A woman he'd met through work. Apparently they were taking things slowly, both being cautious after previous relationship failures. I hoped it worked out for him. Not because I cared about his happiness specifically, but because everyone deserved to find whatever peace they were looking for. His journey was no longer connected to mine. In November I ran my third half marathon. This time Rebecca flew in to run it with me. We finished together, holding hands as we crossed the finish line. The sense of accomplishment was incredible, but the joy of sharing it with my sister made it even better. Remember when you used to hate running? Rebecca laughed as we collected our medals. You said it was boring and painful and you'd never understand why people did it voluntarily. I've changed my mind about a lot of things. I admired my medal. Turns out I didn't hate running. I just hated running to fit someone else's schedule. When I do it for myself on my own terms, it's actually great. Metaphor for your whole life right now, Rebecca observed. She wasn't wrong. December brought an invitation to speak at a women's conference about resilience and reinvention. The organizer had read my blog and thought my story would resonate with the audience. I was terrified but said yes anyway. The conference was in Chicago, my first time speaking publicly to hundreds of people. I stood on that stage and told my story, the affair, the divorce, the painful rebuilding. But I focused mostly on what came after. The discovery of new passions. The building of new relationships. The creation of a life that felt authentic and fulfilling. Divorce felt like the worst thing that could happen to me, I told the audience. But it pushed me to become someone I'd never have become if I'd stayed comfortable. It forced me to figure out who I was without someone else defining me. And that gift, however painful the wrapping, changed my life. The standing ovation surprised me. After my talk, dozens of women approached to share their own stories. Some were going through divorces. Others were contemplating leaving unhappy marriages. All of them were searching for hope that life could be good again. I gave them that hope because I'd lived it. Because I knew, from experience, that you could survive the worst and come out better on the other side. On New Year's Eve, I hosted another party at my house. This time I included Eric. We'd been dating for 6 months now, and while we still weren't defining what we were to each other, he'd become an important person in my life. As midnight approached, everyone gathered in my backyard. I'd hung string lights and set up a fire pit. The winter air was cold but not uncomfortable. We counted down together, cheering as the new year arrived. Eric kissed me at midnight, a sweet, simple kiss that promised nothing except this moment. I appreciated that. I wasn't ready for promises or plans. I was still enjoying the freedom of not knowing exactly where my life was heading. After everyone left and I was alone in my quiet house, I poured myself one last glass of champagne and went out to the backyard. The string lights were still glowing. The fire had died down to embers. I thought about where I'd been 2 years ago, discovering my husband's affair, confronting him, making the decision to leave, filing for divorce. Those early, terrible days when I couldn't imagine ever being happy again. If I could go back and tell that version of myself anything, what would it be? That she'd survive. That she'd do more than survive. That she'd build a life more fulfilling than anything she'd had before. That the pain would fade and new joy would take its place. That she was stronger than she knew, more capable than she believed, more resilient than she could imagine. That the end of her marriage wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. One where she got to be the author. I raised my glass to the stars. Here's to beginnings, I said to the night. And to becoming who you were always meant to be. The champagne tasted perfect. The night was quiet and peaceful. My house stood solid behind me, a symbol of everything I'd built and protected and transformed. I was Natalie Riley. Not Graham's wife, not Graham's ex-wife. Just Natalie. Designer, artist, writer, runner, friend, business owner. A woman who'd been broken and had put herself back together stronger than before. A woman who'd taken revenge not through anger or retaliation, but through living her best possible life. Through choosing herself. Through refusing to let betrayal define her future. Graham had destroyed our marriage. But in doing so, he'd inadvertently set me free to discover who I could become without him. And who I'd become was pretty wonderful. I finished my champagne and went inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. More growth, more change, more life to be lived. I was ready for all of it. The beginning of my story had involved falling in love and getting married at 23. The middle had involved betrayal and heartbreak and divorce. But this part, the part where I built a life entirely my own, this was my favorite chapter yet. And it was only just beginning.
Thanks for watching!